This is a ref, Shawn Hochuli, that we know very well. Why don't you talk to us a little bit about his track record with the Commanders or the Philadelphia Eagles this season, the guys that are on his staff. I got a couple questions for you after you break this one down, but give us your take on this game and what we might see from a referee perspective and who you think that favors.
Yeah, so if I'm the Commanders' ownership, I'm furious that Hochuli was assigned to this game to begin with. And as you touched on back in week 15, the Commanders at the Saints. Commanders were up 22-13. Hochuli, they screwed up the clock at the end of the game. The Saints had a big passing play down the field. The clock stopped for some reason. It allowed the Saints to spike the ball, run a play, and score a touchdown as the clock expired. And then they went for two, and they eventually did not get that. But that was a major screw-up, especially if you bet the game. But just from a Washington perspective, you've got this guy that almost screwed us over, less than 6 weeks ago. Now you've got him on this game, the biggest game of the year for us. I would not be happy about that. But as far as the Hochuli crew itself, yes, he's the head referee. And around that line of scrimmage, you've got Hochuli, as you noted, Alex Kemp, and Clay Martin. And so the key points here, Hochuli and Martin ranked 1 and 2 respectively for offensive penalties this season. And then as far as the all-important offensive holding, these guys, Martin, Kemp, and Hochuli ranked 1, 2, and 5 respectively, calling that particular penalty. And when I dug into the numbers here, I knew that Washington had issues with Hochuli and Kemp in those respective games. I double check this, and then I quadruple check this just to make sure my numbers were correct. 48% of the Washington offensive holding penalties this year have come in 2 games. Hochuli with the Saints hosting the Commanders, and then Kemp with the Commanders hosting the Falcons on Sunday Night Football. 2 games, 48% of their offensive holding penalties this season. So I think they do tone it down in the playoffs because they traditionally do. So that's the positive for Washington. But when you've got that trio up front monitoring the line of scrimmage, it's not good. The Eagles themselves, I've seen this plastered all over social media this week. The Eagles in the Sirianni-Hurts era, 6-0 with Shawn Hochuli, and that is true. But people don't give context to it, and that's what drives me crazy, and that's why we do the best coverage. The reason being, in my opinion, as I just pointed to, the focus on the offensive side of the ball, what would be the best thing to combat that? A good offensive line. What do the Eagles have? A great offensive line. So it makes sense that a team with a great offensive line is able to combat the Hochuli officiating and win because of that. Whereas if they're going against an opponent that struggles on the offensive line, over the course of a game, that does add up. And in fact, in those 6 games, the Eagles have a +2 penalty advantage over their opponents. And those are primarily in that offensive holding false start region. So these things all add up. The game itself, I've liked Philadelphia throughout the playoffs. I like them here, but they've been their own worst enemy at times. They let Green Bay hang around. They definitely let the Rams hang around last week and easily could have lost that. I think they control the game on Sunday, but it would not surprise me if the same thing happens where it looks like Philly's got the game under control. Then you look up in the 4th quarter with 6 minutes left and Washington has a chance to win. I don't know what you think, but those are the officiating numbers on this game.
It's pretty crazy. I would agree that I do not understand why the league would stick a ref who made a massive blunder like that almost lost the team a game. And it wasn't just a small mistake. It was a colossal mistake with the game clock. After the game came out, they admitted that he made a mistake, but there was nothing you could do about it. There was no way to go back and review it. But that game should have been over when they spiked that ball down with 3 seconds left. They should not have been allowed the Saints to get off an extra play. And the fact that they did and scored a touchdown and then almost beat the Commanders on a 2-point conversion attempt was absolutely unbelievable in real time. But seeing this ref then get assigned to this very same game, like you said, and not even a half a season later, when all these other refs have opportunities to get assigned to it, because you're only really holding one guy back, right? Like one guy next week, you're not going to stick on this crew. So you could literally stick any other of the referees in the stable on this game, except for the one who's doing the AFC Championship, and you choose this guy. Yeah. It seems suspicious, but it's got to be very frustrating if you're the Commanders.
Yeah, absolutely. If I'm Josh, I'm not sure the fellow's name, but yeah, I'm raising holy hell about this, but too late now. He's on the game.
Yeah, it is too late. And you're right. So what Joe is saying is that the reason that the Eagles, and this is an important distinction, the Eagles are 6-0 with Shawn Hochuli, but the reason the Eagles might be better with Shawn Hochuli is because he focuses on the offensive line, and the Eagles tend not to commit as many penalties because they've got great players along that offensive line, whereas their opponents don't have as good offensive line, probably get flagged for more penalties, which then helps the Eagles because a penalty on a 1st and 10, setting up a 1st and 20 is almost as bad as a sack. Like taking a offensive holding penalty on any drive almost in every case kills that drive. That is one of the worst things that you could take. And that is going to be a big time impact here when you've got Jalen Carter going up against a backup for Sam Cosmi and his Washington Commanders team with an offensive line that wasn't even as good as what the Philadelphia Eagles had, even if Sam Cosmi was healthy. All right, let's talk about the second game, Joe. The second game, we've got obviously the Buffalo Bills traveling to Kansas City to take on the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs are 1 win away from being in the Super Bowl with a chance to be the first team ever to have that three-peat in consecutive years with Super Bowl championships. The referee on this game, you're going to talk a little bit about what his influence is and his impact is on the way that you think that this game could be played out. Why don't you give us a breakdown on this referee and what you think he's going to call in this game and how you think it might help us determine who could win this game?
Yeah, so Clete Blakeman, the head referee, and again, this has been publicized pretty well throughout the course of the week. I can tell you right now, it wasn't by accident that Clete Blakeman got this gig, okay? There's 17 options to have that game. The NFL wasn't sitting in the office on Park Avenue with a wheel and spinning the wheel, and it just happened to land on Clete Blakeman, and they're like, yep, let's go with him. I ran through every metric you could to put forth the narrative that it's not a pro-Chiefs crew to sort of to squash that talk. Blakeman checked every single box. He was the only one that you could have had to do that. I can tell you why. Home teams in NFL was 5-11 with Blakeman this season. The Blakeman crew ranked number 1, calling penalties on the home team, 53.5%. The Chiefs' record in the home era is not very good with Blakeman, whereas Buffalo's is. And then home teams in the playoffs with Blakeman, they're 7-5 straight up, 3-9 against the spread, favored by an average of 5 points in those contests. So you add all that up, you cannot have this build up to the game after what happened last week and say, oh my God, the NFL set this up for the Chiefs to win. It's the exact opposite of that. So you imagine if they put John Hussey on this game, who's a great home field referee. Can you imagine the groundswell after the game last week with the Texans and the Chiefs? Hussey's on the game, the best home field referee. It would just be endless build up to the game of, this is rigged, this is this is that. Blakeman squashes that. So the NFL didn't do it by accident. I know that for a fact. There's no way they could have done this by accident. No way. So the crew itself, you've got Blakeman around the line of scrimmage. Blakeman, 2 Hochuli crew members, and a Sean Smith crew member. So the contentious calls this past few weeks, unnecessary roughness and roughing the passer. We all saw it last Saturday. So here's the deal. Blakeman's crew this season ranks number 1 for unnecessary roughness. Sean Smith, who will be monitored, one of his crew members monitoring the line of scrimmage, they ranked number 1 last year and top 5 this year. And then roughing the passer, the Hochuli crew's got that covered, and you have 2 Hochuli crew members on this game. They ranked 2nd, 1st, and 3rd the last 3 years, respectively. So you've got all those penalty areas covered. I don't know if they're going to call them or not. I think they try to let them play. I don't think the league wants this to continue, this narrative. But that's just my opinion. I could be dead wrong. And we see those flags come out on Sunday. The teams themselves, I mean, you've covered this, and you guys cover it from every angle as far as all the different metrics and stuff. To me, it's just, we've seen this before. We've seen Buffalo win in the regular season, and then in the playoffs, they come up empty. So at this stage, it's more a psychological thing for them. And I still think that 13-second game haunts them. It's just one of those things. You got to show me you can do it. Actually, forget about me. I'm just a guy talking about the game. They need to show themselves they can do it. Because you think about it, if Buffalo loses again this week, that mental hurdle to overcome going forward, it's almost impossible. I like the Chiefs just because I've seen them do it time and time again. Buffalo, I've seen them come up short time and time again. I'd like to see Buffalo get there, but there's no way I could put money on them in this situation.